thank you everyone for being here with us tonight. How do you feel? Good? Y'all are ready. I will just say that because we were trying to get y'all to eat, to mingle, and you were like, no, I'm sitting in my seat. I'm ready to get this knowledge about how to get money. So here we go. So thank you. I have to say thank you first to Google Digital Coaches for partnering with Her Agenda on this event. Can you stand up and just wave and raise your hand again? Let's give them a round of applause. They're hosting us tonight and providing us with all the insight and data. And also, you know, maybe you didn't get a chance to visit them before the event, but maybe after, you need to make sure you make your way over there. We have what we're calling the funding marketplace, where we have resources that are available to entrepreneurs to get access to funding. One of those resources is ERA, which is Entrepreneur Roundtable Accelerator. They have an accelerator happening this summer. If you apply and you're an early stage company looking for seed investment, they invest $100K in your team. And so we have someone here from their team tonight. Woo. Awesome. So talk to them, ask them questions about, you know, how you can qualify, and everything happens through relationships and people. You can't just apply blindly online. You have to have some type of like face-to-face communication. So tonight you're getting that. And then we also have Kiva in the building. They're in the back with the green tablecloth. I actually have a very fond personal connection to Kiva because I actually got a Kiva loan. Kiva is actually like Kickstarter meets like loans. So you basically crowdsource your loan. So I got $10K from Kiva in 2015 when I was just like at the crossroads between, am I going to do this full time or am I going to go back to work? And then I got this loan and I'm like, all right, let me figure it out. So Kiva is a good resource for you if you're looking to like get some capital to get started and experiment and get off the ground. So my name is Ranisha Bing. If you don't know me already, I am the founder and CEO of Her Agenda. Her Agenda is a digital media platform that is working to bridge the gap between ambition and achievement for millennial women. Our motto is no one ever slows her agenda. What that means is whatever your goal is, go for it. Don't let anyone or anything stop you. So tonight, we're talking about getting money, and I don't really want to rehash the statistics. We already know that not enough of us are getting funded, but we are brilliant and we are capable, and so we need to change that. And so I'm lucky to be sitting next to women who have mastered the art of getting money, is what I would say. All in different ways, because, you know, there's not one path to success. You know, you read on TechCrunch about certain people raising money and all of that, and that gets the praise. But also, what is praiseworthy is you creating something that someone is willing to pay for. And those little victories along the way matters. So let's just dive right into this discussion. I want to start with Pollyanna, who's at the end.
Hey,
Hi, Pollyanna.
Hi, everyone.
So just to clarify, we have with us today Pollyanna Reed, who is a celebrity ghostwriter and a journalist. We have Deepti, who is the founder and CEO of Food to Eat. And we have Lauren, who is a marketer, brand strategist, and entrepreneur. And she started a fund. So she's been on both sides of the table. So my question for you, Pollyanna, is you just quit your full-time job
on Friday.
A few weeks ago.
Congratulations.
Yeah. And I have some numbers here. In 2017, your business brought in around 113K. And in 2018, you brought in 147K. So these six-figure years represent a major jump from 2016 when you brought in 40K. What changed in order to make that jump?
Yeah, so I think, you know, a six-figure bank account begins with a six-figure mindset. And so for a long time, I was a journalist and I was penning, op-eds here, op-eds there, making 300 here, 200 here. And then I realized I needed to play a bigger game and partake in a bigger conversation. So as a writer, most industries are saturated, right? So as a writer, how was I going to pivot? What was my blue ocean strategy? So then I realized from, speaking to mentors and, just attaining, different, learnings from different spaces that, a lot of high profile individuals, so my communications firm works with politicians and founders and athletes and celebrities, they now look really bad if they're not participating in some of the conversations that are happening, in the world at large. And so I'm the secret ninja in a lot of these celebrity teams. And instead of making 300 here and 300 there, I'm now closing $30,000 deals and $50,000 deals because I decided to play a bigger game. And that was very strategic. So I think that when you think about the vision of your life, what does that look like, right? What is your why? And then you reverse engineer it and work backwards. So I knew the life I wanted to live, and it meant that I needed to earn way more money than I was earning in 2016.
So I'm curious because you had a six-figure year in 2017, a six-figure year in 2018 from what was essentially your side hustle, but you just left your job. Why did you stay there so long, and what was the moment where you decided, okay, I need to jump into this full-time?
So, I hate when I hear new entrepreneurs complaining about their 9 to 5. I dropped out of school my second year of college, 2008, right? And I look at the corporate world I look at the world as my classroom, and I look at the corporate world as a place where you can conduct research and data. Like, there's no better business school for me. And so I stayed in my 9 to 5 because I was able to sit down with the corporate executives and pick their brain. I was able to sit in meetings and take notes. I personally think that in order to run a successful company, you have to see and study how one is run. And so I stayed there until I was ready to move on to a different learning environment. And just to piggyback on the last question you said, I also mastered my sales and negotiation tactics. I keep 3 rules in mind, right? You either sell to a new customer, you upsell to an existing customer, or you get a current customer to buy more frequently. And that also helped me.
You know how Khaled, everybody used to quote him, and he's like, the price went up. Your price should always be going up. In the beginning, it's a little scary. I remember my first paid speaking gig. They asked me what was my honorarium, and I was like, what is an honorarium? What? I had to ask someone else, and then I said it, and then realized later that I said it way too low. And it happens. That's the mistakes you have to make, and it's scary. But, along the way you learn and you get more confident and you grow, but it's still sometimes a little bit uncomfortable. I want to go to Lauren next. You started out modeling, and then you started your own wine company at 19, which got acquired. She was 19 years old. She started a fund, and now you are the founder of a marketing company, which you are at the helm of, where you work with Fortune 500 companies and lead strategy. And it's just, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine what your day is like. But as someone who's been on both sides of the table, as both founder and investor, what have you learned about money?
You can never have enough of it.
Amen.
I also have 2 children. I live in New York City, so this is the struggle is real. The mindset, to Polina's point, you always do have to think about what's next, what's bigger, what's better, and how you're going to get there. And in my case, it's not just for me, and I know Dipti has children as well.
I know I don't look like I have kids, but I do. I have proof at home.
I do too. Mine are much older than yours though, so we'll leave that alone. My kids are finally checking my dollars and checking my purse. They're 9 and 11.
Lauren's kids can babysit Deepti's kids.
Pretty
there we go.
Pretty much. She's got 9 months and 3 years old. But what I've learned about money is that it's always based upon relationships, right? Yes, you have to have a great business. Yes, you have to have a solid model. But a lot of it also comes in taking the time to cultivate relationships with people who want to be vested in your future, whether that's you as an individual, whether that's a business that you're going to start in the future, whether it's a concept that you're planning to create. But that level of investment is always necessary. We can hear about people being scrappy and doing things on a shoestring budget, and sure, you can. But I think we are absolutely moving into a space and a place where you need more than that, right? That can be like your foot in the door. That can be what you do to test the market to see if there's a real opportunity while you might still have a day job. But at the end of the day, you're going to need some real resources to make really big moves. And I think what I find, especially for people like us in this room, is that you're not always comfortable making that ask. You're not always comfortable speaking up for yourself. You're not always comfortable saying, this is what I need and this is why I need it. And people read that energy, right? People read that level of confidence. They read that energy all the time. They feed off of it. It informs a lot of their decision making, even in a split second, whether they continue the conversation or not. Half of the time, they've already made their decision. So I'm really passionate about this topic. I know that we've mentioned ERA, and it's an incredible program. I also sit on the board of directors for an organization called Digital Undivided, and this is what our mission is. It is to make and create and ensure that there is a place where women own their work, and more specifically, where women of color own their work and therefore own their wealth. So we have to own it if we really want it.
And for those of us, we know the statistics because I think this room has read the Fast Company articles about the lack of investment in women entrepreneurs, but especially Black women entrepreneurs. So say you are sitting across from a Black woman who wants to go after VC funding. What advice would you give to her in terms of what she needs to do up front when she gets into the room?
So simple. I've been saying this for years. And it's funny because I used to say this and ask that people like not tweet it, not video it, hey video. But now I don't because I'm so comfortable with it because it's become such a popular topic. And I think it's been probably 7 or 8 years that I have been saying that when people of color, when people feel disadvantaged in any way, whether it's because you're a woman, you're someone of color, whatever you think your like automatic handicap is that makes you feel a little insecure about having the conversation you know you're about to have, acknowledge the fact immediately, right off the bat. And so what does that mean for an entrepreneur who's, going to a VC and walking into a meeting? It means switch your deck. And so most decks have your team as the slide towards the end, almost the second to last or third to last slide. And I've been saying for quite some time, and every single entrepreneur who I've mentored who has taken this advice has come back to me and said, oh my God, I got another meeting, or oh my God, I got a check, or oh my God, I got an introduction to someone else who did write a check. Put your credentials at the front. If you already question if they are going to have some concern or trepidation about your credentials, your experience, all that stuff, I've heard so many times people go, oh, I went in for a pitch meeting. It was great. I thought it was okay until they really started paying attention, but it was over. And they really started paying attention because the slide said, oh, they went to HBS or UPenn or Columbia, or they worked at some great company, or they worked at Google or what have you, that got their attention. And so if you know that that is something that you feel uncomfortable about, that should be your second slide. The first slide should be, this is the name of my company, here's my logo. Your second slide should be, here are my credentials, and we're gonna keep it moving. And you don't have to acknowledge it as anything else other than, and these are the places that I've worked and where I've gone to school and the people on my team, and now we're gonna dive into the business. And if that means that you think you're gonna get their attention, and their attention is clearly important in the success of your meeting, that's what you do. Try it. Tell me how it goes.
That
Tweet
is
me.
smart because a lot of the time if you're in that room, you're out of their scope in terms of who they think of when they think about a scalable startup founder. And that leads me to my next question about, relationships and networks and how to get access to those rooms in the first place. What are some tips if you are just getting into this and you don't have access to the right networks to get those intros or warm introductions? How do you get your first investor meeting?
Sometimes you just got to really put yourself out there. And that means that you put yourself in the most uncomfortable situations, and that when you walk into a room, even a room like today, this might be your practice. This might be your practice for networking, for your elevator pitch, for making a new friend, for staying in better touch with someone, and sometimes, I won't say I'm guilty of it because I'm happy to do it, but I think it's something that a lot of people point out about me is that I often offer a lot. And I don't always offer a lot because I want something in return, but I tell you, if I look back now at the Rolodex of people that I can call on to say, hey, I need something with zero formality, with just a text, a phone call, it gets done and I get it all the time because I've offered so much to other people. And so sometimes when people will go, well, I don't know how to make the ask, or I don't know what to do. If you have something to offer it. And it can be something that you might not even see as super valuable that might be really valuable to somebody else. I mean, I've had people say, "Oh my God, girl, how did you do your eye makeup?" I'm like, "Honey, come on, let's go to the bathroom. I'm gonna show you." I mean, you never know where it doesn't even have to be a business thing, right? Like, it can sometimes be something small. It can be, Dipti and I were talking about schools with kids. I just met her today. I made the offer just because I felt like it. Hey, if you need help with nursery schools, let me know. I've done all the homework. I can make all the intros for you. Who knows what it's gonna lead to? Maybe, we'll do something in the future. Maybe not. Who knows? But maybe she knows someone that can be helpful to me in the future. Maybe this is the beginning of an incredible relationship, if nothing else. But I do think that the more we give, the more we put out into the universe and create for opportunities for us to receive. And so that is something that's worked really, really well for me.
And you, I will say, you're someone who really delivers. Like, when I first met you, you didn't even know me from Adam, and you invited me to your house to do the interview for Her Agenda. I featured her in Her Agenda when her book first came out. She has a book called The Path Redefined. I'm in her home office, and then she's like, "Do you want to stay for dinner? I'm meeting her kids." I'm like, "Okay, sure." And then ever since then, we've been in touch, and it's been, like 8 years since then. So yeah, she means what she says about that.
And we serve good food at home.
I'm sending my kids over.
So you got food to eat. Can you deliver the food to my house? She's got the catering company here.
Yeah, I know. But just quickly to piggyback off of that, like what you were saying about just ask, right? I think most of the time we're so afraid of like CTOs of really large companies, and we're like, oh, I can't reach out to them. They're never going to respond. I reached out to the CTO of Cisco, who's an Indian woman, and again, like we talk about representation. I was reaching out because I just admired her, and I literally just wrote her an email and said, I've been following you for years. I really admire the fact that, you're doing what you're doing. And within like 2 days, she responded. And I had a simple ask. I was like, I just want to talk to you a little bit more about the industry and where it's going. And she actually responded. So sometimes the people that you think are unreachable, they're reachable because guess what? We're all human, right? At the end of the day, nothing separates us except our experiences. And so if we just learn to remember that everyone is human and just become more comfortable, just own your, who you are and your unique part, and it's all good.
And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that when you reached out that you made it a simple ask. You don't tell your whole biography, life story. Make it very easy for them to respond quickly and simply and easily. And then you just follow up and you build the relationship slowly from there. I want to focus on you and your experience a little bit, Deepti. You fundraised for Food to Eat. You did a 500K friends and family round. And often, when it comes to fundraising for women, we don't necessarily hear no. We hear, oh, you're not technical enough, or oh, you need to maybe have a CTO co-founder, or I don't think that this idea will scale. Did you have that experience when you were fundraising? And if so, how did you navigate that?
So when I was fundraising, I first went to friends and families and small angels. Yes, can you clarify friends and family? Because, a lot of times for people of color, that's not necessarily friends and family. Oh, yeah.
It's not.
Oh, no, it's true. So when I say friends and family, I use that term a little loosely because it was a network that I built, right? So I did go to my parents, and they gave me a little bit. I was fortunate and am fortunate enough that they didn't have to spend their savings on college because I did get a lot of scholarship money. And so they did have some saved. And I said, hey, so since you didn't have to spend on college, is it possible to get some money to use towards my company? They were nice enough to offer, but they didn't just give it to me, right? So one of the things that I had to do, even to people within my network, is that I was showcasing everything that I've done in my past and how successful I was at that, right? So in my political career, throughout college, I worked on a number of campaigns. I talked about what I did there, how I did it, how I built out the certain campaigns, who I worked underneath, and, how I was able to grow myself as an individual, and even the responsibilities that I was given as a 19-year-old on a campaign for someone who was running for mayor. And all of those things were to showcase that I was worth investing in, right? When you talk to investors, most of the time, they don't just care about your idea, they care about who you are and how much you're going to actually kill it to try to make this company work, right? They want to know that you're not going to just drop it when the first hard thing comes up. You're going to actually go past that challenge and push yourself. So for me, when I was talking to friends and family, yes, I did go to my parents, but the friends aren't like my friends from college. Like I didn't have friends that were really rich and I just hang out with because they're millionaires. These friends were people that I actually worked with and people that saw me working and, that I kept going back to and I just kept in touch with. I kept telling them what I was doing in my career. And I just knew that at some point that they would be interested, hopefully, to invest in my future. Because I invested with my like my current state with them. So the friends were more so mentors, people I worked with, people that I knew that had been working in their own respective industries for 20 plus years and had some money on the side that they did investing with. I didn't call them angels because they don't do this as a job or they don't do it regularly. So for me, friends and family, it's not like I hang out with a bunch of rich folks and they were like, yeah, here's $50,000, take my checks and never have to return. So that was the process for me. It was just, again, telling them why it was important to invest in me and my idea. When it comes to investors and how, how I dealt with those kinds of questions that you're asking about, first of all, I'm sure you guys all questioned the fact that I was a mother. I look really young, so I had to deal with the fact that I didn't look my age. So a lot of times when I was going into a room, people were like, is this for school? Are you here for a college project? Are you interviewing me? I'm like, no, I'm actually here because I'm going to pitch my idea. I want you to work with me. I want you to invest in me. And, I always say just use what you've got. Use the fact that you're a woman of color, and use it to your advantage. Don't see it as a disadvantage or just put it out there, right? Just be like, I know this is what you're thinking. And like you said, just put it on the front page of the deck. Here are my credentials. And I did that. I never put it at the back because I knew as soon as I was going in, especially, as a brown woman, most of the people I was talking to, and I did this even with white women, right? Just because I felt uncomfortable. I didn't feel like they believed in me. And that's just my own uncomfort. But I got asked questions like, when are you planning to have kids? And I said, well, why does that matter? Why is it relevant? Because when and if I do have kids, that is my personal choice, A. B, I will not, just like I wouldn't abandon my family, I wouldn't abandon my company. So I just shut the conversation down, and they felt so uncomfortable that they didn't really even ask further, right? I just made that, I was like, well, what about you? Tell me more about your family. We didn't start this conversation because of that. We started this conversation because I came in here to talk about money. I didn't talk about your family. Why are you asking me about mine? And most people just feel uncomfortable they just feel uncomfortable on what that other person is going to say. So I just put them in a spot.
Do you have that on tape?
What?
I would love to see that on tape. I just love to see that on tape.
No, unfortunately, I don't have that on tape. But and then I've had some great experiences, right? Like my second company that I started with my husband and a cousin and a fourth co-founder, ERA actually invested in us, and I was, I think, 8 months pregnant. And I went into the room trying to hide my belly, thinking like, oh shit, they're not going to invest in us. They're gonna drop us. They're not going to even give us the second round. And it never came up. And that was amazing because things are changing. We are allowing people to understand that this is a norm. We're not going to drop something just because we're 8 months pregnant. If anything, being a mother has helped me prioritize my life better. I have it every single time I go into a meeting, it has to be a meeting that's going to help me with my company drive some more revenue, give me another opportunity for speaking or something. I have these 3 things in my head, and I'm not going to do it if I'm not going to get those things out of that meeting. Or speaking at an event, whatever it is. So just keeping that in mind is really important. And so I tell people all the time, being a mother has helped me prioritize and has made me a better entrepreneur. And I even wrote an article in Forbes about it. So I will tweet that out if anyone's interested. But just things to think about. And so just shutting down those conversations right in the beginning is really important.
Did you ever try to go after VC funding?
I did. And for our first business, it just didn't make sense because of the pivot that we had. We started off as a consumer model, and then we pivoted into a B2B model. And it wasn't the right space. When you're going to VCs, they're looking for, one of 2 things. Most of the time is how quickly you're going to make a return for them and how quickly is your company going to scale. And we're a very service-oriented business. That it wasn't something that was proper for VCs. So I did go to VCs and just quickly learned that it just wasn't the right place for us for food to eat. Try to build a business where you generate revenue and can sustain to some degree on that revenue. A lot of times we think the first thing we need to do when we start a business, we live in this culture that everybody thinks like that's the only way to start and grow a business. But you can create a business where you work off your own revenue and you use that to sustain yourself, build product market fit, and then go to an investor when you've built something that you think is investable in, right? Like and then you also have power over your own journey because you can do what you want with your ideas in the beginning. So creating a business where revenue is a part of that model, a lot of times people are like, I'll just give the product for free and see what happens. And that's great, but it's hard to raise that initial capital. So those are 3 things that I would consider, but definitely accelerators are an awesome place to start.
Yeah, and I would just piggyback that by saying Digital Undivided is more of an incubator than an accelerator. But I think there's one thing we haven't talked about that I think is really important. I just want to touch on it really quickly, is that there is a language barrier and there's a process barrier to entering the startup world, specifically the tech world. There's a certain language, there's a certain process, and if you don't know it, you need to learn it very quickly because you'll get counted out. And so we spend a lot of time at Digital Undivided training women of color on what it means, what a cap table is, what your deck is, what your MVP is, beta testing, figuring out what your addressable market is,
what your value proposition
like everything above and beyond. Hey, this is working and people are buying my service. I don't know how. It's just happening. Like, that's great. Like, that's awesome. Keep that going, and that's good for yourself. And that's the joy of being a privately held company and kind of self-funding yourself either with your own cash or through revenues, is that you don't have to necessarily have an assembled board or people to answer to, but it's good for you to have that information for yourself, if nothing else, right? Because that's what's going to actually help you grow and not just coast. And I think that it's easy to coast, and I think that that's part of our handicap, is that as women of color, we are expected, for the most part, though it's an unfair assumption, to want to have and create what's called lifestyle businesses. And so lifestyle businesses are businesses that run our lifestyle and don't do much else, right? Or maybe they support like an assistant or some family members or some friends or whatever, but those aren't seen as kind of investment grade opportunities, if you will, because they're deemed to be things that might just work for you and that won't work for me as an investor or somebody else. So I think that getting over that language barrier, that process barrier, and making sure that you show up in the room prepared to speak the language and to compete with people who don't look like you is incredibly important. So as a resource, I would say Digital Undivided is great. As another resource, a company that I also advise is Pipeline Angels. And they are an organization of women, many of whom are incredible executives and C-suite women themselves who are looking for opportunities to learn how to be angel investors, and then they angel invest together. And so they have an extra kind of sensitivity, if you will, with their lens of the opportunities that they look at because they're women too. And so I think those are some really, really great resources as well. And then, of course, whenever you have opportunities to come into rooms like the one here today at Google, take it. Take it, meet people, get here early, follow up with people. Don't just be a paper card collector. Like, actually do something with that. Follow up. LinkedIn people. I hear people recently saying, oh, I don't know LinkedIn. I don't use LinkedIn. I'm like, I don't get that, How else do you track where people work these days? How else do you track, like, who might know somebody that you need to know, right? Like, I sit on a board of another company. We were going through acquisition talks, and I got really annoyed with one of the founders because I said, we're talking to who? Like, I saw it in it's an investor update email. And they said, well, we're having some, like we're in conversations here, but we're getting some resistance. Oh, well, maybe it's not resistance, but it's been slow getting a response. And I'm like, I know the CEO. Well, they said to me, well, how would we know you know the CEO? And I'm like, did you check LinkedIn? It's my first connection. This is what it's for. Like, it's a tool to help you, right? So use the tools that you have that are at your disposal to help you to figure out, sometimes, it's great to make these simple asks, but sometimes it's also really great to be able to say, hey, I know we know so-and-so in common. And you reach out to that other person who's your mutual first and say, hey, do you actually know this person? Because sometimes it is LinkedIn. Sometimes you don't really know the people that you're connected to. So make sure that that's the case. You know what I mean? Yeah. Make sure that's the case first, because then you also feed into the stereotype of not doing your homework. So please just don't feed into stereotypes. Just do me that favor. But use the tools that are available to you, and And as much as we live in this world where we're constantly being told to like, yes, have our 3 things. That's amazing. I also have my 3 things, my 2 things, my 5 things that I want to look at and that I want to always keep top of mind. I think that sometimes we end up being a little too transactional when we go out to network, and people can feel that. Like, oh, wait, I don't check your box. Oh, I don't have a this for you or that for you. I can't do this for you now. And it's like, okay, but you don't know who you're talking to. Right? Like some of my most incredible relationships have come because I'm just talking to someone shooting the breeze, and we figure out later that they're like a boss and I'm a boss and we're going to do something together. But that's not why we started talking, right? So don't count anyone out, because it's sometimes the people that look least like they are the part that have the biggest pull, pocket strings, whatever it might be, access, that can be helpful to you. And so try to really create genuine connections. And I always kind of worry about that later. Like, well, how can you be helpful to me? That's not always the most important thing.
Yeah. I think it helps to think about your value proposition to others. It's like, how can I be helpful to others? And then it sort of is like a karma full circle moment where then your network wants to give back to you, important to you. Just before I open it up to questions, we literally have time for one audience question, but this panel will be back on stage at the end to answer more questions. So if you have a question, write it down so that you don't forget it. I'm just going to give one person a chance to ask a question, and then we'll go back to it. But Pollyanna, you're going to get the last piece of advice before we kick it to the audience. So as a bootstrapped entrepreneur, what's a money challenge that you have faced, and what did you learn from that challenge?
Yeah, absolutely. So in my 20s, I had a shit ton of debt. Like, how many people have debt? Everybody, right? Like, and before we can get to the beautiful stages these women are at, like, you know, debt can be very crippling. And if you never learn to understand money, you will always be a slave to it, and you will always be on this constant cycle. One of the reasons I also stayed at my 9 to 5 was so that I could, because I had the vision of transitioning, I wanted to pay down my debt as low as possible so that I didn't have to worry about that, right? I always say, like, your 9 to 5, like, they may determine your salary, but you determine your total income, right? So at my 9 to 5, I think it's $65,000, right? But I brought in an additional 147, right? Paid down my debt, right? And it made me confident to move into the next transition. So what I learned is that, like, I have control over my future, right? You have control over whether you go to Starbucks every single day or whether you like take that and you work with an advisor and you get your financial plans in order so that you don't have this additional stress and anxiety, because once you have a business, I mean, you know what I mean? It already comes with its worries. So like make it somewhat easier on yourself as you move forward.
Amazing. Let's give a round of applause to our panel. They will be back on stage after Francilia's presentation. So we have time, like I said, for one question. So raise your hand if you have that question. And then we have 2 mic runners. So I'll let the mic runners decide who asked the question, because I don't want to be the bad guy.
You drove from Cleveland?
7 hours, yes.
No, Cleveland is further than 7 hours. Cleveland, Ohio?
No, it was 7. It's a smooth ride.
Lord have mercy.
I would like to point out she is a Her Agenda Insider, which is our private community, which you can apply to become an insider. In the back there, raise your hand. And you get a free poster when you sign up today.
I want my poster.
All right. Your question.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kevany. I'm from Cleveland. And I think this question is for Lauren, because I feel like I'm like vibing with you on the frequency with making it not transactional. The industry that I promote, or not promote, the industry that I'm in generates $26 billion a year. And so 76% of girls in this industry are mothers before their 21st birthday, and they lead to higher rates of criminal convictions, living in poverty, and their kids are taken. So it's the foster care industry. So I grew up in foster care. I wanted to brand it in a way that would make it cool. So I started engaging celebrities and elected officials in the plights of foster youth. And it's afforded them access to go to concerts, sit courtside. Jay-Z gave us a cool shout out on stage. However, because of how attached I am to it, from my own personal experience with being in foster care, when I talk to people, they can't see that particular population as a place they would want to donate dollars to because of the data and the outcomes of this particular population. So it's created barriers for me when talking to people about this population and why they should invest their time or dollars before they become the 76% of girls who are having their mothers before their 21st birthday. What would you suggest I change? Because you talked about diction, and a lot of times when I'm in meetings, I'm no longer operating in a fear of loss because it's just like, look, I put the credentials, like you said, in the deck on the front end of the things that I've been able to do as a former foster youth myself, but it's not making headways. Am I not talking to philanthropists? Is it the diction? Is it just not the right person? Is it just not the right time? I mean, like, what would you suggest?
I know we don't have a lot of time, and that's deep, so I want to talk about that offline as well. But in short, I will say that do you share your own experience at the forefront of that conversation when you're speaking to donors?
Sometimes I do, because when I start getting into details, it's like, don't do that.
Yeah, so this is
Right.
what I would say. This is my quick advice, and this is in a vacuum, and then we can talk more about this. But I can give you an example. I sit on a lot of philanthropic boards. The biggest board I sit on is at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and I sat on that board for 9 years now. And when I had my first business, which was a wine company in Virginia, there's an organization based out of DC called the Lupus Foundation of America. And their president, Sandra Raymond's like, oh my God, I met her through some people. Oh, I got to get you on board. We've got the Butterfly Gala in DC. We want to have you involved. And I said, great, we can have a time at the tasting room where we donate a portion of the weekend sales to your organization. And that did really well. And I was so excited. I liked her. The more I knew about the cause, I wanted to help the cause. I had no personal connection to lupus. I don't have a friend with lupus. I don't have family with lupus. It didn't really matter how much I cared about the cause. I was not as helpful as I thought I could have been, given my track record of success in philanthropy and fundraising and getting people's eyeballs and attention and eventually their dollars. And I realized in that moment that if you don't have a personal connection to a cause and your own story to share, people aren't going to give. So you need to start leading with your own story, with your why. Like, why are you here? How have your foster parents and your experiences, I don't know your full story, but were you ultimately adopted? Like, what is your story? You have to be comfortable sharing that at the very beginning and saying, I want other girls. Is it only girls?
No, it's the data's bad. So
But your organization?
Oh no, I do boys too.
Okay, so I want to make sure that there is never another child who sits somewhere worrying if they're going to be adopted one day or what their future is going to be like, or that, is walking to school and in a classroom feeling as though, well, somebody else has parents coming for cupcakes and I don't. Like, these are things that pull on heartstrings and get people to remember that they're human. And when you tie them to your own experiences and say, like, you wouldn't have known this if I hadn't have told you. And everyone should be afforded that opportunity. Everyone who's coming through my program should be afforded that opportunity. They didn't choose this situation for themselves. Some irresponsible adult chose this situation for them. And I think that is the story that you're gonna have to start telling, in the way in which you're gonna have to start leading to get people to pay attention to the words that come out of your mouth and how important they are, because they touch you.
And also, just to add to that, you can also pick the investors, right? You don't always have to be at the mercy of the investor. If an investor doesn't want to hear your why, they're not the right investor, right? At the end of the day, you want somebody you get along with to invest in what you're doing. And your story is most important to why you're doing what you do. It doesn't even matter what you're doing. It's the why. It's because what you went through in that experience is what is so precious to this, movement that you're trying to change. And so a lot of times, you have to be picky, even though you may not feel like you're in the position to be picky because you need the money. But just be picky at some point, because your story really matters. The why is always really important.
And then I'll just end by saying, in the investing world, when we're talking about fundraising, which, yes, you're still fundraising too, but it's different, philanthropy versus investing and looking for ROI in dollars, right? So these people would be hopefully they're looking for ROI and impact, right? And so what is that? What are your track records? What are your data points, your metrics that you can point to, other than smiling faces? And smiling faces are incredible, but you've got to share those stories. I sat on the board at the Apollo. We have a Divas Luncheon tomorrow that's specifically for giving money to our arts and education programs. And people don't even know enough of the work that we do at the Apollo around arts and education. They think it's just performances at the Apollo. No, we have to remind people all the time. And that's the unfortunate part and the really, really, really hard work of nonprofit work is that you have to constantly remind people of why you are doing the work that you're doing. And the last thing I'll say, because this is something that we deal with at Digital Undivided, which is also a nonprofit, is that sometimes when you show up better than they expect you to, they think you don't need it. I don't have the answer for that yet, but I'm working to solve that this year for us at DID. When I get the answer, I'll let you all know. But unfortunately, it's like, shoot, if you don't show up looking like you came from the street, you know, like what do you have to do? Why can't we show up? Why can't you show up looking fly? You know what I mean? So we're going to work on that. We'll come back. I know you have so much to share.
My question is for, I don't know how many other women are mothers on this panel, but the two who identify as being moms. How are you able to have a work-life balance with running your own companies? And like, what kind of relationship are you able to build with your children while you're doing everything that you're doing, being fabulous?
Well, there's a picture of me everywhere in the house, so they see me everywhere. No, I'm just kidding. I don't really believe, and I don't know how you feel, and you've been doing this longer, so I feel like I should be asking you and listening to you, but I'll just give my quick two things.
Way to make me feel old. This is no, I'm actually not that old.
No, I think your kids are older, so you've been doing the mom thing a little bit more than I have, so you've got that, experience. But for me, I've been saying this even before I had kids, but I always say balance doesn't really exist, right? So it can exist if you allow it to. And so what that means is that I pick 3 things that are a priority in my life at that moment. And, right now those priorities are, I have 2 companies, I have 2 kids, and family. Those are like the 3 things that I concentrate on. And I just make sure that everything I'm doing is surrounded by them. In a couple of months, I'll make sure that there's something else that fits into that, whether it's making sure that I'm constantly going for a run or that I need to go hang out with some of my friends. And so for me, it's like that 3 to 5 things that I always pick to make sure that I'm not driving myself crazy. Did I do this today? Did I do this? Did I do that? And because you're never going to be perfect at it, and you're always going to drive yourself into this constant guilt. And right now I'm kind of dealing with that when I'm trying to breastfeed, right? And trying to make sure that, do I want to continue breastfeeding? But I've literally been sitting at my desk and breastfeeding in front of my team when one of them is here. And I'm like, that's kind of awkward. I feel bad that I'm constantly like kind of like in front of them and doing that. But in any case, it's guilt that does that to me, right? That I have to keep doing this. But I also have to think about my sanity, myself, and like self-care is just thinking about yourself for a second. And, I know that everyone says breast is best, but for me, when I'm thinking about, yeah, I know. Oh yeah, they say that, and it is on every mommy blog, and I wrote about this as well by experience. That yes, I know breast is best, and that's what I should be giving my kid. But I also think that a sane mom is also best. And so if I'm coming home all crazy and angry because I had to sit at work with my breast out and trying to feed, and the reason why I don't go to a room is because I know it takes too much time. And that's going to take away from my work and the things that I need to do. And so this is the craziness that you go through. So again, just pick those 3 things and make sure that your life can, at least you give attention to those 3 things. And that's what I've been trying to practice.
And we need to normalize breastfeeding. Like, let's clap it up for that, because if men were the ones that breastfed, imagine it would be just like common. People would just like be accepting it anywhere you could whip it out, and they'd be like, "Yes, go ahead." Yeah. But because it's us, everything that we do has to be cloaked in shame and put in a side room.
Yeah, I mean that's why. If you go to my Instagram, like one of the things that I really try to own is just being the imperfect mother, right? Just like I try to do the best, and I do what I think is best for myself and my family, and I own it, right? I was talking about this earlier that I forgot to, so for the men in the room, how breast pumping works is that there's something attached to your boob, and you pump into a bottle, and I forgot to bring the bottle, so where would I pump? And I literally pumped into a Solo cup. You know those cups that used to drink nasty stuff out of, from college? That's what I was pumping into. But it was because I needed to say, I wanted to save the milk for my kid, and it happens. And I post stuff like that because it's to just empower each other that it's okay and it happens, and you figure a way out. And we're women, we're strong. We got this shit covered.
Well, I feel bad saying this. I did breastfeed my children, but they also survive very well on formula. So,
Exactly.
let me tell you, them suckers are strong, and they learn to talk back and have strong will, and they're very smart. And
do that
Similac and Nestle Good Start know what the heck they're doing. So, sometimes you just gotta do what you gotta do.
Exactly.
Takes
They
me
get
back.
their fair share of formula
Takes
too.
me back. What was the question again?
How do you balance motherhood?
Oh, right. Okay. So I don't believe in balance. I've never believed in balance. There's a whole chapter in my book, In the Path Redefined, and it is talking about, it's titled, I Don't Believe in Balance. It's called Work-Life Integration. And so I try as much as I possibly can, which is always, case in point, from Renisha's story that I had her over to do the interview, and she stayed for dinner and she met the kids. That's the story of my life. I mean, not every day, and it's not always appropriate, of course, but my kids know what I have going on in terms of my work, and my work when and how it's necessary knows that I have children and that they were part of my life. And I think that the more we are transparent about that, it's so much easier to set our priorities, and it's so much easier to set other people's expectations that they might have of us, especially when it comes to our work output and sensitivities that help empower us to do a really good job at whatever it is we need to do. And so I try to not put myself in situations where I feel like I have to choose, and that is the luxury of being an entrepreneur and having your own business, is that you don't have to choose, right? Like if you choose to not take the meeting or not go or not do something, you know what the consequence is. You might not get the deal, you might not make the money, whatever it is, you can make that decision if you want to. And I try not to do that very often, but the few times that I've almost had to, people say, "Oh, no, we get it, we're so sorry." And so sometimes people also forget. Sometimes, if there's something that's going on that's really pressing, they kind of become myopic in their ways. And sometimes it's unintentional and it's innocent, and other times it's unfortunate and you have to deal with it kind of head on. But I think that the most important thing to do is to share that with our kids. Every week I write a newsletter designed to help people, but really specifically women, get to the next level of everything they want and deserve in life. And the topics vary. And recently I was traveling a lot because I've taken on a new role, and professional role. And I've been traveling an insane amount. I've already flown 45,000 miles for 2019, like from January 4, which was a Friday, till today, which is February 13. And I said to my children and to my fiance, I said, "Thank you so much for making sacrifices for me." And they looked at me and they all said in their own way, "These aren't sacrifices, these are investments. And we don't look at it this way." And so that was actually, not that open rate matters, but we are at Google and tech is important. It was our highest open rate. Like it was the most well-received email. We got crazy shares. I had men writing me back, and it was entitled, "Less Sacrifices, More Investments." And so I think if we start flipping the narrative of the way that we look at our own life, and like we're not making sacrifices. Like we are making investments in ourselves, in our children, in our families, in their future, in their livelihood, in wealth creation, in legacy. And if we stop apologizing for working hard, like why was anybody apologizing for working hard? I don't understand that, right? And you start saying, no, I'm making an investment in me, in you, in us, so that we can go and do things that we want to do in life, travel, have foundations, give back, just have some freedom, financial freedom, whatever it might be, then I think that our families are much more understanding and much more supportive. And I'll actually post it. Where will I post it? I'll tweet it out. I'll tweet out the link to that particular post because a lot of people found it really helpful. And when you look up the definition of investment versus the definition of sacrifice, you are reminded of the fact that every day when you go to work and every day when you put your energy into something that's really important for yourself and your future, it's not because you're giving up one thing to get another. That's what a sacrifice is, right? You're keeping everything and you're just doing more. And you're putting more into the pot. You're putting more into your investment pool. You're putting more into your future and waiting for the payout.
And it just going back to that, integrating, I used to call it inclusive parenting because I took my son to Israel to a conference that we were both attending a couple of years ago. And, to South by Southwest when I was speaking, like my husband and him were in the back while he was like, probably making a shit ton of noise. But people respected that. People liked the fact that, like I brought my kid because he's seeing his mom being a badass, right? He's seeing his mom doing things that weren't the norm. And, most women apologize like, "Oh, so sorry, I brought my kid." I'm like, no, I brought my kid so you can see how great I am because I want him to worship me, Because I'm sure when he turns into a teenager, he'll be like, "What? No, I'm not hanging out with her." Like, so, but we need to make our children to understand that women are not meant to just be the caretakers. women are meant to be wherever they want to be, which is a boardroom, which is on a panel, speaking wherever, like that's what they need to learn and make that a norm. And so if they see their mothers traveling and, and understanding that it's an investment and not a sacrifice, that is like changing the narrative of what motherhood and parenting looks like. My husband can feed the child. He doesn't need to be attached to my breast. Like, yes, go make a bottle. Like that's what it is. People still thank me. People still say, "Oh, my husband's so great. He wakes up in the middle of the night." I'm like, it takes two to make a kid. Like,
Deepti says all the time, like the dad is not the babysitter. He's also a parent.
I'm babysitting today. Get the fuck out of here. You're not babysitting. You're watching a kid.
Do we have another question here? She was the first person to arrive at the event, so I will go to her because I know you've been waiting.
I don't need a mic. Oh, okay.
We do need you on the mic. You might not need it, but we need it.
Sorry. Hello, my name is Buki Ojefo. I am the founder and executive director of Hair on Purpose, which is a nonprofit organization empowering women and girls through hair education. And thank you all for your time and for putting this on, Rhanisha. My question is, I love events like this where everyone is, we'll go home and we'll Google all your links and we'll follow up with you, and we're so excited, and which I hope we all do. But I also
Do it and tweet with the hashtag.
Yes,
That's how you connect to the community in the room with the hashtag.
absolutely. But my question is advice for a marathon mindset. Really getting to the place where after all the frills and jills are kind of like out and, all the excitement's gone, how to keep the momentum spiritually, emotionally, physically, mentally after this event.
I got a word right now. Woo, Jesus.
Before she even finished her question, I felt your emotion. I'm like, oh.
And just because I really understand what it means to build a company from the ground up, right? And I understand what it means to do it in a space and in a time where social media was not necessarily the thing, right? And all of that visibility wasn't the thing. So there weren't people kind of like hyping you on the back, like, yeah, you're an entrepreneur and all that stuff. There wasn't any of that. It was just kind of like this raw will. So right now, my firm, as I told you all, started with just me as an individual, right? Today we have 5 full-time staff, 13 project-based staff. My main office is in Queens, but we also have space here because we have the Google contract. There are costs to run a business. There's a cost in time, as the lady said. There's a cost, and I just want to just throw out there's this kind of concept or this misconception that, you're a business owner. So people say this to me all the time. I'm like, y'all just don't know, do you? You're an entrepreneur. You own your own business. That means you could do whatever you want. Okay, no. I work so much, okay? People love to see the end results. I work so much. And while working, I have to figure out how to balance my husband. I have to figure out how to balance my family and my friends and my parents who now have things going on, and still balance my life because time is going by, right? And there isn't really any energizing force behind all of it all, except the reason why I started this in the first place. And the reason has to be bigger than you for you to survive when things are hard, for you to survive when no one's looking, for you to survive when you don't have the money, when all of these hurdles and issues come up. My reason for starting this business, and I tell my team this, and I invest in this reason. But I said, before I started our Fulkins Consultants, I had worked with a number of Fortune 500 companies. So I worked with Pfizer, Thomson Reuters, MetLife, and I'm from Rhode Island. I'm from Cranston, Rhode Island. We were the only Black family until I probably hit high school. I worked in companies where I was usually the youngest person. And let me back this up. I'm 31 now. I started the company at 23, okay? Usually the youngest person in different roles, and usually probably the only Black person in different roles, and usually the only females. To this day, I'm usually the only female in the boardroom or on the conversation. And so I started the business with this idea that I wanted to create a space where minorities, where women, where underrepresented groups could feel and work in an environment where they were thriving, doing good work, feeling appreciated, and not feeling like they had to put on the other face or be the other person to fit in, right? That was the base. I wanted to create jobs, and I wanted to help my community by changing the economies of the world and the space that we worked in. I said I wanted to create a Fortune 500 company, a global company, a national company that had people who looked like me as the core of that company. And then I wanted that company to thrive and go beyond myself. I wanted to go beyond my family and help my family's family and so on and so forth. So in those nights when it's 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm still in my office, during those times when, the money is tight and our payroll comes out, I always say about $20,000 to $30,000 every month comes out of that bank account just for payroll. Right? In those times when things are tight, in those times when there's not that support, in those times when there's not the glamour for people to say, oh, you're an entrepreneur, that's so wonderful. When I don't have those things, the one thing that keeps me going through the hard times is this idea and this understanding that this goal, this mission is way bigger than me. And that's it.
I just want to jump on that point, and thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's amazing that you think about your why. I think that's the underlying reason here. I actually live with depression and anxiety, right? So, there's sadness and frustration, and then there's being crippled in your bed for weeks. So for me, people often ask, okay, so how do you navigate? Everyone's formula is going to be individual, right? There's no one size fit all. So for those of you who may have mental health conditions, you're going to have to figure out your formula through trial and error, through experiences, professional help as well, right? So yes, understanding your why is critical and very important, but there will be days when you probably don't want to get out of bed. There will be days when you may need to check in with your friend. I have friends who, I can call them and I don't have to say anything. They know that I'm in a state of despair. They can feel my energy through the phone and they know exactly what they need to do, right? So your support circle, very important. People you can lean on and talk to who also understand the hardships that you're experiencing. So my support circle includes friends who also have their own businesses, their side hustles, and they can relate. I'm not going to go to my mom. She doesn't own a business, right? I don't need her to pat me on the back. I need someone who understands the circumstances that I'm dealing with and can give me sound advice.
Hi, my name is Mish. I'm a human resources professional working at a nonprofit. I'm also an independent human resources consultant. I have
you need your resume redone? Hit her up.
This question is for Pauliana. You worked 9 to 5 and then you started your business. How did you structure your schedule to work 9 to 5 and then, work on the side?
9 to 5, 6 to midnight.
6 to midnight.
Most days. So I live by a rule of the 5 before 8. I try to cross 5 things off my to-do list before 8 a.m. I wake up. I'm a morning person. I wake up relatively early. Mm-hmm. In my 20s, I was going into the office at 6:30. Actually, still to this day, until I quit, I was going into the office at 6:30, working a few hours on my own stuff, taking my lunches. And when I would have to go to conferences to speak, I was using my lunch hour, book a boardroom, and practicing my speech in front of the window. And then after work, get home, you eat something. You know what I mean? I don't have kids. I don't have a family. I don't have a man. I don't need to take care of anybody, right? So my situation is very different than others maybe. But I never, I don't think that lack of time is ever the issue. The truth is that people mismanage it, right? So
the word.
Right? So, you do what you have to do. My girlfriends know, they don't get emotional when we don't do lunch. Right? People understand the sacrifices because I've established those boundaries and I've communicated to them clearly. If I have a meeting with someone, there needs to be an agenda and an objective. We're not just hee ha ha. I'm not just kicking it with you. I'm not leaving my house to meet with you. We can do it over Skype or phone. Right? You have to figure out what that formula looks like. I've always been very transparent with my bosses. Anywhere that I've worked, they could easily Google too, right? They know how dope I am, right? They know what I'm up to, and I've always been very transparent, so I didn't have to hide. They knew, and most of the time they considered it an asset, and it worked for me. Sometimes they want to be assholes, whatever. but you do what you need to do, and you manage your time accordingly, depending on what your situation is.
How do you
Wait, can I make a question for you? Is that okay? Because I think this is important. I think it's a good point. And you're a writer and you're an eloquent speaker, so I think this is probably helpful for the room to hear. How do you set those boundaries over email to say, I'm not going to meet with you to hee hee ha ha. Let's have a call or a Skype. I think the room could probably benefit from that.
How do you set those boundaries?
Yeah, like how do you communicate that over email? Is it, hey, what do you want to talk about? Like, how do you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I
Pick
mean,
a time here on my calendar. We can have a call. I won't meet you for
well,
lunch.
I mean,
Like, how are we doing this?
everybody. I'm sure you guys get the same requests, whether it's DMs, people wanting to pick your brain or whatnot. Like, I ask, 2 questions. Like, do you have a quick question? Are you looking to become a client? Right quick, you have to figure out get your life together. And then the second thing is, so if you are looking to become a client, you're gonna pick a time, date, and payment method. If you have a quick question is not, how do I define?
3 things. A time, a date, and a damn payment method. Okay.
And if you
3 things are very clear. I like it.
And if you have a quick question is not, how do I build a brand? And that's why it's important. Content production is not optional. I have so much content. If you throw a quick question at me, I likely have a link, a video, a podcast. I have something for you, so I don't have to necessarily deal with you.
And I have a follow-up question, because a lot of us work at jobs that stress us out, that, we get burnt out by the time we get home. And you mentioned that you didn't have to deal with assholes. How do you manage dealing with assholes?
How do I manage dealing with assholes?
I mean, this is
You know
real
what?
life.
My work was always so meaningful to me. So, I mean, if I had to take a call, I would, I would sneak away, take a call. You kind of have to, you have to assess your work environment and figure out how you can, kind of steal time away. Or you have to figure out if you can get a girlfriend to cover you while you leave your desk to do that deal on the phone. You know what I mean? So, it's kind of individual. But for me, my work was always so important. So if I got in shit, I didn't care. I wanted to do what my passion is, and I knew that I had to just stick it through, because it's not happening to you, it's happening through you. I need to stick it through, push through, and eventually I get to the other side of all the shit that I was dealing with.
Thank you.
And I just want to just jump on real quick, because when you're going from side hustle, then your side hustle becomes your main hustle. I think it's really important that you set boundaries, because otherwise you're going to get burnt out. And like someone was saying earlier about marathon mindset, the thing that's going to get you out the bed is not because you're so passionate about it. It's not because, oh my gosh, I get to work for myself and I'm so excited about this idea. It's literally because I only eat what I kill. Right. That's 1. And 2, it's bigger than me. Like friend Celia was saying, it's not about the fact that I feel tired or that I'm just exhausted or I feel nervous or doubtful about if I can close a deal. It's all right, I need to just get over myself and do it. And then the third thing is setting those boundaries so I'm not working 24/7. Do not work 24/7. Because, again, you will burn out. I'm not team no sleep. I definitely get sleep. I will sleep in on multiple occasions. I don't care. But the key with that, and with even taking time for yourself, seeing friends, going to brunch, is to make sure that you look at that time as an investment. You are recharging yourself so that you can show up as your full self and be healthy and happy and whole when you are answering those emails, when you are in the board meeting, when you are in the pitch meeting. So look at time like dating or spending time with friends and things like that. I look at that as time where I'm still working, because I'm working on myself, investing in myself and recharging, so that on Monday morning I am ready to go, happy, healthy, and whole, in order to tackle all the microaggressions and all the fuckery that's going to come at me, because I am a Black woman entrepreneur. So that's just my.
And also at your 9 to 5, try not to drop the ball, because they will use your side hustle against you, right? So make sure you are showing up. You're there early. You're at every meeting. You're raising your hand. You're front seat. Do not give them a reason to use your side hustle against you, because it'll blow up.
And just show why it's an asset, right? Like what you said earlier, that's really important. How what you're doing on the side makes you a better employee.
Yes. The man in the suit.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hanu. I work a corporate job as a management consultant, and also I'm starting a side business called Empire Thoughts. So what we do is we focus on helping small local businesses or entrepreneurs scale, right? And I'm sure you guys have heard that before, as there's a bunch of us out there. And my question is, being an independent business development consultant, right? A bunch of people have that title, right? And all your journeys are amazing. It's just, I understand you have a why, and I know you're motivated. How do you show your clients that, right? Like, how do you separate yourselves from the pack? Because a lot of people have the same idea as you, right? A lot of people probably want to start a food business. A lot of people have the same title that you had. So how do you show clients and the impact that you're going to have?
So I think that's big, the numbers, right? Initially, especially because I was a young person, a young adult, and I didn't really have too much to back it up,
Right.
Somebody took a chance with me, this nonprofit who wanted to, expand their business. Right. And then I won. The first contract I ever won for a client was $10 million. That spoke for itself. And I always talk about when I remember winning that contract, and there was a gentleman who was with the Department of Homeless Services, and he said to me, he didn't know me from anywhere, and he said, yeah, I've met people like you before, like you're not going to win. And then after I won the contract, he's like, he's my friend now to this day, and he took me out to dinner.
As you should.
He took me out to dinner, right, after we won the $10 million. So how do you show up, and how do you have to win? You have to perform. You have to not just talk, but you have to deliver. And that's what differentiates you. I know for a fact as a business owner today, I'm looking for staff now, a lot of folk do not deliver on what they say. There's a lot of talking going on. And so you'll be the differentiated individual when you deliver.
Thank you.
Can you say what your company is and what industry you're in?
Well, I am just right now just in a research phase. I have several business ideas and obviously would be looking for funding for either one. Particularly a B2C business, maybe a restaurant. I'm also looking into a nonprofit specialized in immigration workshops for new immigrants that are coming into the United States that are looking for education, new job searches, similar to that.
Look at the companies that you're that are already in the space and who's invested in them. So if it's a restaurant, what kind of a restaurant are you opening? And if they've raised money, look into who's invested in them. If it's a B2C company, look at the B2C company that you admire in the space and just look up investors, and you can find those on both those websites. So it's just the easiest way because you know that they're investing in the space or have some kind of interest, and then you can look at other investors that are similar because they may not invest in the same idea if you're doing something very similar to other companies they've invested in.
My business is an event planning business and a brand strategist business. My particular question was building off what Mrs. Rahim was elaborating on, structuring a business. We're in the process of certifying now, and I find that trying to incorporate in New York City is kind of expensive. EIN numbers and affidavit of publishing requirements, and it's like no one has $2,000 or willy-nilly to give to a newspaper to say, hey, we exist. So how do you balance like the income and profits that you get in investing in business versus putting your name out there with promotional materials, advertising with Google, stuff like that? So could you give it like an estimate percentage number or an approximate figure?
Getting your EIN is a free thing, so don't believe the hype. And there's a lot of, figure out the resources that are free. That's number one for the structural pieces. I ended up getting a lawyer that helped me structure my business, but that was too expensive. Anyway.
Through relationships.
Yeah. But structure, there's a whole bunch of free stuff now, so that's number one. Number two, marketing. I did not market the company at all. In fact, we didn't have a website until probably 2 years ago. That was different. I marketed through my work, right? So I did good work. Word of mouth was how my company grew. Today's a different day and age. You need a market. There's a lot of free stuff. Even the Google resources that I named, most of them are free. Pick the social media or social network that works best, where your client can be found, and leverage that to create visibility. Those are kind of like the pieces that I would say. In the beginning phase, you don't need to go throwing a whole lot of money into like the structural process and the marketing. Like that's not going to work. So try to use the free resources. Okay.
Thank you.
You can also incorporate in Delaware.
Yeah,
Just
Delaware.
pay the
I'm
fees.
incorporated in
They have
Delaware.
a registered agent in New York. It's a lot cheaper.
And I will just say real quick, Microloan Kiva is here, so you should probably talk to them if you need help with like funds for getting your LLC in place. Because I know what you were talking about, the newspaper advertisement. That's with the LLC. you should talk to Kiva. And also, again, like there's a lot of free resources out there, and a lot of that it's very overwhelming to search. You have to really just talk to people and be connected to the right networks that can plug you into the right opportunities. And I will say, if you invest in the Herge and the Insider community, you will get access to that. And so I hope to see you in the community. We'll connect you and help you get your business up off the ground.
I'm a full-time teacher, and I also am a co-founder of Black Girl Tutors. It's a tutoring service that is based in high-need neighborhoods. Our first 2 years have been a whirlwind, like amazing. We were on NBC. I don't know how we got on NBC. We were on it. We've been featured on the nightly news, and we've been everywhere, and we actually turned a profit, right? And this is great. And we have a steady stream of clients in high-need neighborhoods like East New York, like Brownsville, whoop, whoop. That's where I'm from. That's where I teach. That's where I work. That's where I do business. But we're at the point where, and I say we because I have 3 other business partners, we're all teachers. And by the way, we funded ourselves. We just pooled our money together, 6 teachers, and we funded our own business. No startup loans. But we're at the point where we want to reach more individual children. Right? We do have a contract with the community-based organization, and we also are working on a contract with the foster care system in New York City. But what about the individual kids that we wanted to work with? Kids like me who needed tutoring. And we're at the point where we're a for-profit business, but I'm like, do we go to be a nonprofit? Do we start a GoFundMe? I have no idea. I just want to get our services out to families who need it. And families are being turned away because they just can't afford our service. And that's not why I started my business. That's not why I became a teacher. So the specific question I have is, do we switch to a nonprofit from an LLC, or can we do a Kickstarter, a GoFundMe? How can we get scholarships for kids?
Okay, well, there's a few ways. I mean, you could create a foundation as part of your business, right? And that can be another arm. You can also donate your services out of your business and work with your accountant to structure it so that that becomes a tax deduction for donation of services in kind to people. That then, you put your hourly rate, whatever it is, and that then gets deducted against your income as your in-kind services that you've given to children in need. Or you might even want to look into a partnership with an organization that could utilize your services and maybe give you a grant to be able to give your services to children in need who are a part of their system or of their program.
You could also do a for-profit, nonprofit hybrid.
A B Corp.
I know about it.
A B Corp. A B Corp is a social good corporation. Yeah. But are you an LLC? We're LLC. So I mean, it would be a little complicated to make a B Corp, but and there's different tax implications. But you could explore that as well.
All right, we'll do one last question.
Hello, everyone. My name is Candace. I'm the founder of 32letter.com. My question is, who is your money mentor? Who's the person that you go to speak about, money problems, expanding, goals, dreams? Who is that person to you, and what did they give you?
I think everyone can answer it quickly, and you have 10 seconds.
Oh, Jesus.
All right, my money mentor, her name is Patience Ameniki. She actually owns the building where my office is now. She started off as a homeless person who immigrated to the United States, now has the 3rd largest home health care agency in New York.
My money mentor, I don't have one person. It's through my networks, through my Forbes 30 Under 30 community. I went on this trip to Israel called Reality, and there's just people there who have started billion-dollar funds, and just I'm constantly putting myself in rooms where I'm like, wow, you did that, and just keep in touch with people, and I have specific direct questions. So they're not my mentors necessarily, but occasionally, because we built a relationship of trust, I can go to them and ask them about negotiating certain things. And one of my first mentors is a woman named Ty Beauchamp, and she comes from media, and now she's an entrepreneur. And sometimes when I get random questions about contracts or negotiations, I'll text her, send her the screenshot of the email and be like, how do I reply to this? And she'll text me within 5 minutes and be like, say X, Y, and Z. Or she'll call me and be like, this is what you need to do. So that's it.
I don't know if I have a money mentor, to be quite honest. I think I've made some pretty good money decisions. I don't know how or why, to be honest. I think it's just intuition. But I have a great money manager who's a woman who's incredible, Stacey Francis. So I I guess, I don't know, she might mentor me more than, I guess she mentors me.
Yes,
I guess
you have a money
I don't
manager,
know,
okay?
No, I mean, I guess she mentors me. I don't know. She makes good decisions, so I'm not too mad. And then I let my accountant mentor me, because the tax code is complicated. So, you need a good accountant to like break down the rules, especially now that they've changed. You know what I'm saying? So make sure that y'all know what the new tax rules are.
My money mentor has been an advisor that I work with, my husband, because he comes from a finance background, and my parents, because I think one thing that's really important is financial education. And my parents did a really good job at like teaching us where the money was going, how it was being spent. And so now I'm trying to be a money mentor for my children, and hopefully financial education can be a part of public schools and education everywhere. So also just educating myself through all these people.
A combination of all the answers. So definitely accountant, bookkeeper, like financial advisor. I confide in them a lot. But also too, like Steve Harvey says, if you have 5 broke friends, I guarantee you'll be the 6th. So I try to make sure that like I'm constantly hanging out with people who earn 5 zillion times more than I do, because like I want to learn like how do they think, how do they process things, how do they strategize. So friends and my team.
All right.
Amazing. So thank you to all of you for being here. I know that this was a long time to sit, but raise your hand if you learned something new, if you walked away with a resource, a new connection, something. Awesome. So let's give this panel a round of applause.